Welcome everyone to Just Onside. I am your host Ahmed Baggio Baghdadi, and I am joined by the man with the snapback and all the clapbacks, Uwais Ahmed, and the man, or should I say, the artist formerly known as Dave, Ayub Bota. Oh, sorry, Ayub Patel. Ayub Patel. My bad. How are we doing, James?
I'm doing well, thank you, Badge. That was a lovely introduction, much appreciated. But doing well, little under the weather, but we soldier through. Lots to talk through. Some really interesting developments this past week with some of the results and off the field as well. So yeah, let's get stuck into it.
Ayub, how are you doing, mate?
Likewise, a little under the weather, but delighted with the result. But obviously, we're going to talk about it later on.
Of course. We've got a packed show, guys. We've got a Premier League to talk about. Big managerial changes. But before we get into that, we are going to start off with fasting and the players that will be fasting during Ramadan in the Premier League and other leagues around the world. So at the moment, the Premier League has allowed a break for players to break their fast. The Muslim players, of course, to break their fast during the games, which is a lovely gesture in itself. It's only a short break, just a little water and banana, what have you, and then we're straight back into it. Other leagues around the world haven't been as courteous. There is Liga A in France, who are outright saying they won't be pausing any games for any players to open their fasts, even though the population of Muslim players in Liga A is higher than most leagues. So yeah, I just wanted your guys' thoughts on the matter. Whether is it a debate? Is it a topic? Is it something that should be allowed? So yeah, take it away. The floor is yours, guys.
I'll go first, OS, on this one. It's a tough one, this, because I think it's not just it's not just a conversation you just have. I think you've got to give it a lot of thought. I've tried to think about the position that I'm in terms of the players who are fasting and playing unbelievable. I mean, we're all fasting at this moment in time. I'm on my knees. I struggle to get up the stairs for all sorts of reasons. So I know how difficult it is to fast, and I presume play sporting or play any type of sport. So in terms of the players, tremendous admiration. But obviously the question is about the leagues allowing players to break their fasts or accommodating players breaking their fast. Now, a country I know very well, France, they've been unequivocal. They've said no. And they have a large Muslim population and a large representation in terms of players playing in French football. So obviously they've made a point. For me, it's something that I've thought about. I've tried to really think about it. It's quite a heavy subject because I always tend to contextualize debates of this magnitude. For me, I look at the society that we live in. If you look at the last 25 years, Islamophobia is on the rise. So that's the context, that's the paradigm that I'm going to answer, or at least give my opinion on this. I think we live in a world which is quite toxic. I think there are people that are looking for a reason to demonize Islam, and I think that's the position that I'm going to answer this on. My personal position is based on that. As I said, that's the paradigm that I'm operating from. So for me, does it give ammunition to Islamophobes? So if there's a break, what's the response of people? For me, does it have a major impact in terms of the game if there is a break in play? It may do, it may not, but I'm more concerned about the impact it has on people who are probably demonizing Islam. So my position is, I would rather not there was any breaks, but it's not based on anything towards players who are fasting. In fact, it's completely the reverse. I'm concerned that at this moment in time, there is a rise of Islamophobia. If you look at 2021, 2022, there was a rise in hate crimes towards Muslims of 42%. So it's certainly on the rise. So I'm concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is that, for me, I don't think really I've experienced any Islamophobia. But if there's a rise of Islamophobia, who gets impacted? Is it the woman who's wearing a hijab on the train? Is she going to be impacted by some some idiot who's going to make a comment or perhaps try and pull the hijab off. That's my concern. So really, what I don't want to do is be in a position where anything inflames already existing prejudices. So my position is, I'd rather not. Now, also, I've been reading lots of comments on this subject, and there are pros. No getting away from it. There is a lot of nice, decent human beings who will make nice, positive comments about this, and they will make a comment based on the fact that this is quite an inclusive thing to do. But I read some comments about oh, here we go again. Muslims wanting this, that, and the other. And what they commented on was they talked about Qatar, the LGBTQ issues. That the position was that's their country, they are entitled to their opinion. What they were saying, some of the Islamophobes, were this is our country. I suppose it's a question that you've got to ask: is it their country? Is it our country? We've lived here for a long, long time. We were born here, so it's our country as well. But that was the position they were taking. So for me, I would rather we didn't have a break because it's a handful of games. It's not many games that are going to be impacted, but it's on the reason or on the basis of I want to try and minimize people sort of using Islam as some sort of force that is taking over certain parts of Western Europe. So that's my position. It's going to be, I think, a controversial position, but it's a position I hope people understand the nuance of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I think Ayub, if I can say, a very thoughtful and detailed answer. And I think you did get across, at least to me, and I don't want to speak for Badge, at least your position and where your views kind of originate from. And I think in the end, if I hear you correctly, in the end, they come from a good place. What I would say, in terms of my thoughts, is that if you look at the games that are affected, specifically regarding breaking fast during the games, the first game this season in the Premier League was Everton Spurs, right, on Monday Night Football. We had the entire central midfield of Everton, Idrissa Gueye, Onana and Abdullah Decore breaking fast shortly after the game obviously began. Clearly it gave Decore quite a bit of energy because he got into he got into fisticuffs shortly thereafterwards. But in the end, if you look at the number of games that are affected in the Premier League, I looked at the fixtures. It's Everton against Spurs on Monday. There were a number of fixtures on Tuesday, out of which definitively I know there was a stoppage in the Bournemouth-Brighton game for Traore and Ouattara. There was also, I believe, I'd have to double check, but I think there was a stoppage potentially yesterday for Aguerd and Ben Rama. I watched the game. I can't recollect it, so I'd love to double check that. But in the end, if you look at the number of games affected and the possible future games where there would be a stoppage during the course of the game, you come to a total of 8 games. You've got Leeds against Liverpool, in which you expect perhaps Konate, Salah, perhaps Keita to take to the field. So there may well be a potential stoppage there. That's Monday, 17th of April. And I think that following Friday, which could potentially be the end of Ramadan anyway, but if it isn't, I think that would be the last day of Ramadan, where there will still be some fasting potentially for the Arsenal-Southampton game, if indeed there are any Muslims participating in that game. So the reason I mention all of that, of course, we had the Chelsea-Liverpool game on Tuesday as well, where we clearly had a stoppage during the Reece James VAR check, right, for his goal that was disallowed. I care to detail all of that to suggest that that's about 8 games across a season of 380 games, which represents about 2% of overall fixtures. And I think the Premier League has taken the view, because they started last year, if you remember, with the Wesley Fofana game, or renowned now as the Wesley Fofana game, when Leicester played Crystal Palace. I think Kouyate was also potentially playing in that game as well. And at that point, the Premier League took the step to encourage referees to talk to the captains before the game and to see if there were any Muslim players participating, and if indeed there was any, additional discretion required, let's say. And what's really interesting, and I would really strongly recommend to anyone to find this interview with Wesley Fofana after the event last year. And he gives an interview. It's available on YouTube. It's about 3.5 minutes long. And it gave me chills, because when he speaks about what that meant for him, what the Premier League afforded to him, that privilege, that additional discretion. He speaks so eloquently and he articulates himself so very well to suggest that, look, I didn't ask for this. There was no obligation on the Premier League to do this. They haven't done this in the history of the Premier League. And it was actually Kasper Schmeichel who went to the referee before the game and said, look, we've got a player, Wesley Fofana, he's fasting. We'd like, at some natural pause in the game, don't manufacture a pause in the game, a natural pause in the game to say, let's stop the game and let's give him the opportunity to take some water in and maybe some energy gels. And he also informed Wesley Fofana just before the game started. And the reason why I mention that is to just, again, repeat the point that this is not something that's specifically requested by Muslim players, neither last year nor this year. It's last year, the Premier League was slightly caught unawares, and it was up to the captains to do some discretionary measures with the referees. And ultimately, I would argue, common sense prevailed. This year, the Premier League has looked to get slightly ahead of the game and obviously asked the referees to definitely take this initiative forward. And I think one of the really subtle yet smart things that the Premier League has done is that, of course, they have to govern the Premier League and they have to govern the 20 teams that are within the Premier League, but they also have the 20 teams as partners for themselves. And they've made the Premier League clubs part of that decision-making process. And I'm quite glad that they have. It's not a directive that they've issued to say games will be paused. What they've said is, let's discuss, let's have some open communication, let's have some transparency, and thereafter, as long as we put a mutual agreement and everyone's on board, we can have this pause in the game that will allow for these Muslim players to have a short little intake of water and energy gels. And I like that because, again, it educates teams, it educates players, it educates the kind of wider public at the games and even on TV that observes. And where are you? I hear you where you talk about the potential threat, let's say, of what this could lead to. You've said you've read some comments on social media. I would like to look at it as a glass half full and say, well, it also represents an opportunity to have some communication, to have some dialogue, to understand, oh, okay, this is what Muslims go through. You had it last year when Sadio Mane went to Jordan Henderson, I think, and said, look, is it possible that Gaffer could rearrange some training, make it a little bit easier? Jurgen Klopp accommodated it. Their head of nutrition, Mona Namer, she worked with the players to see what they could do. You've got some great comments from the head of medical science at Crystal Palace, Dr. Zafar Iqbal, who talks about, well, for professional athletes, look, it's all about nutrition, sleep, rest, training at the highest level to optimize performance. But in the end, he speaks about that communication is key. And as long as there's a good level of communication, we can cater to accommodate the needs of Muslim players. Getting back just to finish off on, you mentioned about France, and I'll just like to finish off there before I give the floor to you, Badge. You're absolutely right about France and the email that the France Football Federation shared with all the referees. And look, I don't want to get into the nuances of secularism in France society and how it's instituted in terms of the separation of religion from state and what have you. I think that's for another forum, and that's not for today. But at the end of the day, I think if you look at some of the reaction from that, you look at Lucas Digne, what he tweeted, where he said 2023 with 3 facepalm emojis. And he speaks about on Instagram, Lucas Digne played for France, French international, speaks about how it's interesting you can have a referee that takes 20 minutes to make a decision, but you can't take 1 minute for a drink of water. So all I would go as far as to say is where the French have taken the view to be what I would argue is divisive, to prohibit, to ban, to show a certain level of, or not to show a certain level of understanding, I think the Premier League have taken it where it represents an opportunity. It represents us to be able to not necessarily just talk about being inclusive and diverse, but actually be about it, because ultimately actions do speak louder than words. So I think on the whole, I agree with you that there is this threat, but I think what do we do? Do we just cower away from that threat because there may well be this minority that takes a certain view or a certain closed view? Or alternatively, with the ever-growing influence of Muslim footballers in the Premier League, this is not something that is going away. And ultimately, if players choose to fast, and if all parties can see that there's no inconvenience, there's no desire to inconvenience anyone or to offend anyone or to impinge on anyone's rights, I would like to think that the majority of people would see it for what it is, which is that it's a little bit of a challenging time for Muslim players. And if we can accommodate a minute and a half break, why not? The last thing I will say, Badge, just very quickly, is quite often when you see these players taking, and Badge alluded to it in his introduction, when you see some of these players taking the water and gels, it's not a case of they're making themselves comfortable, getting the legs out, getting a nice massage, taking in lots of food and what have you. We're talking bottles being thrown around, quick intake. You've got staff helping them get the energy gels in. It's literally a minute and a half. And like I said, it was a natural stoppage in the Chelsea-Liverpool game for the Reece James VAR check. And it was a minute and a half afterwards that you get the game going again. So again, you're right. I can understand your point of view, but I would like to see it as a glass half full. And that's the kind of society that I would hope that not just for myself, but for my children to live in, where we're inclusive, we have dialogue, and we can break barriers through initiatives like these.
No, I think you both bring up really, really very well detailed and logical points there. For me, it's more so, it's like, to simplify it, it takes a minute, literally a minute. I think every other stoppage you'll find in the game will take longer than it would to take a water break to let any Muslim players open their fast when required. So for it to be such a hoo-ha, like, hats off to the Premier League. To be fair, they've actually accommodated this. And watching the game yesterday, United versus Brentford, Brian Mbeumo had to open his fast. It was a 1 minute stoppage, and then play was running again. It is good you bring up VAR, because VAR is another one which we've seen how long that can take. It can take ridiculous amounts of time, whereas no one minds that stopping play. I mean, people mind the application of VAR, but naturally you're going to get these pauses in the game. So for minute stoppage, it's not. I don't feel like, especially the amount of top players that make up some of these Premier League teams, some of the top Muslim players, I should say, like you have your Mahrez's, you had your Pogba's, you had your Mane's. I think it's a no-brainer, honestly. And then switching back to the French league, I find that absolutely wild that they've outright said that you can't open your fast, and we're not going to give you the time to open your fast, given the Muslim population in France. I know you alluded to it. There is some politics behind it all, but the Muslim population in France, think of the Muslim players that made up some of that France team that won the World Cup. I mean, they're their people. So for them to not accommodate them is crazy, in my opinion. There's the Nantes manager who straight up dropped one of his players just because he was fasting. So his stance on it is, until he's fasting, he will be dropped. So it's not even the matter of does he get a minute to open his fast. It's you can't fast, otherwise you're out the team. Which that is like, I just can't understand that kind of thinking. And I'm completely against that kind of thinking, especially in this day and age. It's ridiculous. So that player, I can't remember his name. His name won't come to my mind. But he's been dropped until after Ramadan now, unless he stops fasting, which he's not going to. Which, fair play to him. I stand with him in that regard. In Serie A, we had someone in the Fiorentina game had to go down injured. I believe it was Luca Ranieri. He went down injured and he faked an injury just so that Sofiane Amrabat could go and break his fast and have water and a little bit of banana. And again, how many times in a game do you see people stay down with injuries? And it sometimes can take way more than a minute. And I don't mean genuine injuries. I mean the ones where you can clearly tell them milking it or running the clock down, stuff like that.
I didn't know we were doing a Bruno Fernandes segment, but go on, carry on.
But that shows, though, there's a great level of like camaraderie there for that Luca Ranieri to stay down just so that Sofiane Amrabat can go open his fast. But it's just little things like this where I feel like it's not hurting anyone to stop play for a minute. Just go have water and then we resume again. I mean, there's enough stoppages in football anyway, so like it's not like it's a new thing where it's completely breaking the flow of the game. It's for a little thing like that, especially in this day and age with all the Muslim players, the high profile Muslim players that exist. I think it's crazy to not include that and to not even allow it in some cases. But yeah, that's my stance on it. And I know Ayub's point is It makes the haters basically rile up. But the problem is you're going to have keyboard warriors no matter what. No matter what you do, you could do 100, you could do 99 things right. One thing's slightly against their beliefs, they're gonna perk up. But just because they say something doesn't mean you've got to kind of cower away to it. So, my stance on it is just I think it's a simple thing that should be accommodated given the caliber of players you have and the amount of Muslim players you have, and it really doesn't affect anything at the end of the day. It's a minute.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on it.
No, absolutely, Badge. And again, just to reiterate, I would again strongly advise to go find that Wesley Fofana interview. The sheer delight and kind of joy on his face when he recounts the tale of how it all went down and how it made him feel about the Premier League. It gave me chills actually listening to him because he talks about it just like, wow, they didn't have to do it. It wasn't an obligation. And he talks about how if Crystal Palace had objected, he wouldn't have taken any offense whatsoever. But I think we can do more when we work together. And I don't want to kind of go off on a deep rant and what have you, but it's about talking and it's about coming together and seeing, okay, how can we accommodate one another and respect for other people's faiths and what have you. But yeah, just a superb interview and strongly recommend finding it.
No, for sure. That's something to check out. And I think, to be fair to the lads that are playing whilst they're fasting, we've seen some incredible performances. Morocco beat Brazil. The entire squad was fasting, which is insane. Karim Benzema just yesterday scored a hat-trick against Barcelona at the Nou Camp whilst fasting. So you're seeing some incredible things from these guys and their toughness.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at it last year, in the month of April, because I think that would have represented Ramadan, if you look at Liverpool's stretch of results in April last year, they went unbeaten. They beat United 4-0 at home. Sorry, Badge. Scorers Mane, Konate. I don't know if Konate scored in that game, but I think Salah scored twice and Mane scored once. But Konate scored home and away against Benfica, all in Ramadan. They knocked out City at the Etihad 3-2. Again, goals scored by, I think, Mane and Konate. To your point, listen, for some players, it will affect their performances in a negative way. For some players, it perhaps might improve it. For some players, it makes no impact whatsoever. Ultimately, it's a player's choice, and it's up to the club to work with the player to understand what needs to be accommodated to give them the best possible platform to be at their best. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just have a final word on that. I mean, you've articulated the points beautifully. I mean, it really has been well-constructed arguments. Mine is, as I said, it's not in any way contrary to what you guys are saying. Mine is purely based on, I look at the world that we live in now. Yeah. It's very polarizing. You look at the politics that we've had in recent years. We had Boris Johnson, Jeremy Corbyn, we had Trump, we had Bernie Sanders, so extremities. And that's my concern. So in a sense, it's based on a political argument rather than some sort of footballing argument. As I said, it is a concern of mine. It's a view that I take, but it's based on politics. But very interesting conversation, chaps.
No. It was great. And it's good that we can have a discussion like this being three Muslim men. Like, it's important to us. So we're glad to share our thoughts on the matter.
On lighter matters now, go on.
Yeah, on to lighter matters. Chelsea have brought back the one and only Frank Lampard to the club till the end of the season. It's believed to not be on a permanent basis, just a caretaker role until they actually land their managerial target that they want from next season onwards. What do you guys think? Is this weird? Is this a weird appointment, or is it something that makes sense given his ties to the club? I just want to hear. Actually, I don't want to hear your thoughts. I'll go first on this one because I find it bizarre. I find it very bizarre. Given he's had a stint there and he's been sacked, and it felt like it was yesterday, it seems bizarre. If he had a stint at the club and he was coming back as a caretaker for the rest of the season, I'd understand it. Club legend, dipped his toes into management already, and just let him have a run with it till the end of the season, as the season's a write-off anyway. So I'd get that. But the fact that he's been there, he got fired from his role. I don't know if it said mutual consent, but that's all riffraff anyway. yeah, I just find it to be a little bizarre, to be honest. And I'm not sure. I've not seen the Chelsea reaction to it all. I think I have spoken to a couple of Chelsea fans, and they've made sure to reiterate to me it's only till the end of the season, only till the end of the season. But I'm sure there's a bit of dread there. But I don't understand it personally. But I guess if they have a target in mind for the summer and he won't join until the summer, I guess you have to plug in someone, and they went with a reliable Chelsea legend, I guess.
Reliable. He was sacked.
Yeah.
For incompetence.
I think they're thinking he's 11th. He can't go any lower. But yeah,
Yeah,
they went with their man.
yeah, absolutely. Bad, you're right. I mean, what's that famous kind of, I don't know whether it was from a film or a series, only in America. You feel like, well, only at Chelsea could this happen right now. I mean, it's funny how life operates. January 2021, Lampard relieved of his duties at Chelsea. Thomas Tuchel comes in, wins the Champions League. Shortly thereafter is the next season, or season after, Tuchel sacked, Potter's sacked. And here Lampard has the opportunity again in March 2020 or April 2023 to win the Champions League, kind of. And he was asked about this many times, right? You've seen some of the kind of clips where he's asked about how did you feel when Thomas Tuchel guided Chelsea to the Champions League win in the final against Man City. And you can imagine he would have a mixture of emotions at the time when he spoke about that, right? A sadness that he couldn't be there to lead the club, but of course a certain sense of joy that he was able to play some part in the player's journey to that point. But it's funny how it's come about. I mean, ultimately, even when he was fired, his stock as a Chelsea legend was obviously always going to remain intact, as it should, for all of his achievements at the club. The question, I think, Badge, you alluded to it, and I agree with you. In the end, is it the case that the target that they have in mind is only potentially available in the summer for one reason or another? And whether that's Nagelsmann, Enrique, Conte was mentioned in some circles today. I heard Pochettino, potentially, maybe even Zidane, maybe as a slight curveball. Now that Deschamps has extended his contract with France, I mean, that's the only reason why I could understand that they just want to have, again, perhaps I was going to say a safe pair of hands, but I think you might chuckle at that. But yeah, to give it to a club legend, it's interesting. I can't remember this happening ever before where you've sacked. I mean, Chelsea have done it before, I think, with Mourinho, with a couple of stints and what have you, but it's a little different when there's not that much time that's lapsed. I mean, you went Lampard, Tuchel.
And also Mourinho was wildly successful.
Wildly successful, exactly. And I think Lampard, Tuchel, Potter, Lampard, they spent 21.5 million to get Graham Potter out of Brighton, him and his backroom staff. And that months later, they're having to pay him severance for relieving him of his duties. I mean, Chelsea right now, since the Todd Bowley takeover, it's been a whirlwind. Over 400 million spent, long-term contracts dished out, rumours of players changing outside of the changing rooms because of the bloated squad. Don't know how much truth there is in that. They're 11th, 14 points behind fourth place. I would argue that's 15, depending on goal difference, although United's goal difference isn't that much more superior right now. But in the end, their Champions League hopes, in terms of qualifying next year at least, for what it's worth, probably resides in them having to win that competition this year. But yeah, I think in the summer they'll probably pivot and go get probably a big name manager. And I think they'll probably be able to secure their first choice, I imagine.
Yeah. Ayub, your thoughts, mate?
I'm sort of pleased he's got the gig again. He obviously doesn't deserve to have the gig based on what he's done. But he's an enigma, Frankie, because I keep on thinking in terms of the ex-players that he's probably best equipped to be a successful manager because he's incredibly experienced, incredibly successful, played under a number of good managers. He's a bright bloke. He speaks well. He knows the game. So you'd almost think that he's got all the ingredients to be a successful coach. But for some reason, it's just not happening. What I would love is if he did win the Champions League. I'd absolutely love it. because then it puts Chelsea in a difficult position. I know you're, you're
all right. I see where you're going. I see where you're going.
Yeah. But it just would be a strange situation, because you're absolutely right, chaps. I think there is obviously somebody or a number, because I think Chelsea obviously is an extremely attractive club for many managers. So I presume there's a waiting list or a number of targets they've got. But if Frankie wins the Champions League, what happens?
It's an attractive job because you're guaranteed a hefty payoff. So I would agree with you on that. And as for Ayub wishing for Chelsea to win the Champions League, that's because his son obviously supports Chelsea Football Club. So I think it's just yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It would be rude not to.
Here, mate.
Yeah.
No sympathy here, mate. And just to point out, they're only 10 points above Leeds.
That's about 8. That's about 8 or 9 games.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of Leeds, huge result last night for Leeds against Forest. Big 2-1 victory. I just want to get your thoughts on it, Ayub, and how it affects you guys in the table as well, because a lot of results went for you last night. So I'll let you take it away.
It was. I mean, it was just incredible, absolutely incredible. From Monday to Wednesday, we had a number of games which obviously affected teams at the bottom. The Leeds game on Tuesday, again, the emotions were within a few minutes, we're 1 down. So you can imagine how I'm feeling. My heart was absolutely pounding. It's a must win. I mean, what I wanted was for the players to actually prove me wrong, because I always doubt whether the players have got the mentality. We won 2-1. It should have been more. And maybe against a better side, it would have been costly. But we won. Most of the performances were 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. A lot of strong performances. And that's what impressed me most. Plus, also, again, it's Grazia. He's slowly but surely creating an identity at Leeds. He's very pragmatic. He plays the opposition, which I think I've alluded to the point before, that other managers haven't done that. But Grazia plays to the opposition, or at least sets up based on the opposition. So incredibly happy, unbelievably happy, delighted. Again, it was a roller coaster. If you're 2-1 up and a Leeds supporter, you've always got this feeling in your stomach that something horrible is going to happen in the 96th minute. But thankfully it didn't. What I suppose sort of further elated me was the other results. The Everton result on Monday, I said on the last podcast that I'd take a draw. I thought in my mind that Everton might win, but I said that I'll be happy with the draw. And it was a draw. Bournemouth losing against Brighton. Respect to Brighton, because they are a top quality football inside, and they proved it against Bournemouth. Leicester and Villa, it continues for Leicester. I suppose the bad run of form, and West Ham getting tonked by Newcastle. I mean, that was for 2 reasons. 1, West Ham lost, and 2, it's the tonking that they got. That creates obviously a worse goal difference for them. So, and I've got a feeling that goal difference will have an impact, because it's so tight. The clubs are so well bunched that goal difference will have an impact. So, for me, absolutely perfect Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Superb. I'm elated. I'm struggling with a slight cold, and I'm struggling with the fasting. But Leeds cheered me up no end at all.
You know what, Uwais, before you go, it's really, I can't believe this. I thought we're making this podcast every week. We're going to have content with this guy. Leeds are going to get, Leeds are going to lose. We're going to get great content. 2 of the 3 weeks they've bloody won.
No, we got beat against the Arsenal. Remember?
Yeah. 2 of the 3 weeks.
All right, I see.
You've bloody won.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
No, absolute thanks. I mean, Ayub, I think, recounts probably exactly how he. I mean, I was just thinking about when the first goal went in. I mean, Forest were dominant, right, in that early stretch.
Yeah. They hit the post as well before they scored.
They hit the post from the corner when it dropped to Dennis, I think it was, and he hit the post at the near post. I thought it was going to hit the player's hand, which would have definitely led to a penalty. But anyway, hit the post, and thereafterwards they get a goal. And when you watch the goal, the first goal, again, I thought of Ayub straight away.
Ayling.
When I saw
Ayling.
When I saw Luke Ayling kind of head it into pretty much no man's land, Forrest get the ball, play it inside, cycle it out wide to Dennis. Again, Luke Ayling doesn't quite approach him with, kind of outside the box, lets him come inside the box. I mean, to be fair, I think it was Sinistero tried to come in and stop Mangala. Lovely first touch, and to be fair, it was quite the finish.
Brilliant finish.
Bottom corner. And I think what you want, and this is the thing that I would say, I hate to say I told you so, but I do think Leeds do apply themselves in games, and I think they do fight. And I think that could have not necessarily turned toxic, because you feel at home to Forest, you go down a goal early, fine. There's plenty of time to recover that result, and recover that result they did. But if you look at the overwhelming performance, some great highlights. Again, another big imprint on the game by Harrison. I believe he's signing a new contract as well, if rumours are to be believed. But just the ability to turn that game around in the first half, and then really coming on strong in the second half. And to Ayub's point, they really should have put the game to bed to give Ayub a more peaceful second half. But again, applied themselves quite well. I thought they fought. If you look at the statistics, I think they had like 21 shots or 23 shots or something or the other, 62% possession, I believe. A deserved victory. And if you look at the players, I mean, you had Nonto on the bench that wasn't needed, so that's welcome news. I think he's coming back from an ankle injury, so hopefully he can give Leeds more productivity in the final third, in these final stretch of games. So I think with the players they've got, especially behind Bamford or Rodrigo, or however he wishes to play it, you've got, I would say, Sinistera, Somerville, Nonto, Harrison, Aronson. You've got some endeavour and application there, I would say, and I think that's going to be enough, I believe, to save you from relegation. If you look at the fixtures they've got coming up, a bit of a mix of fixtures, I would say. They've got some really difficult teams left. I guess home to Spurs at the end, but I think they've got City and Newcastle to come, Liverpool as well at home. But if you look at some of the other games, they're playing 4 teams in and around them: Palace, Leicester, Bournemouth, West Ham, as well as Fulham, where you think could still pick up some points, with Fulham's season perhaps slightly petering out. And I imagine Mitrovic will probably miss that game, although I'll have to check.
He's missing it. He's got an 8-game ban.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I just think with the fixtures they've got, and with the opportunity that they've got on Sunday, which maybe you could just give his thoughts on, a great opportunity to really put a little bit of daylight between them and some of the others. And it was really interesting. West Ham won at the weekend, got absolutely hammered by Newcastle, arguably Newcastle's best performance of the season on a side note as well. Bournemouth losing at home, again, great opportunity to go back-to-back wins. Now Leeds have that opportunity to win 2 on the bounce. So unlike Badge, who may wish that Leeds lose, Ayub, as we go back a long way, I'm hoping that Leeds can do the business come weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pivotal week, this. And it was an excellent performance. I think it was. It's difficult as a Leeds fan, especially the type of fan I am. I'm so engrossed in I suppose the result that sometimes it's difficult to be objective. I suppose subjectivity is obviously the way that I work. So therefore, sometimes it's difficult to really to look at it from an objective point of view, as you have done, OS. I mean, I think the quality is there. If I look at the players, I mean, I keep on harking up about the fact it's a Premier League, so you expect quality players. But a player that you didn't mention in the recap was Mark Rocco, who had the best game. He's a player that flattered to deceive. He came onto the scene. He's got a wand of a left foot, but he's just not performed. This game, he was exceptional, and that's what we need. All the players that we have, the quality players that we have, Harrison is hit and miss. He's hot and cold. He had a really good game. He has a tendency to blow coal too often. That's the thing that's going to, against Crystal Palace, we need all of our top players to play well. If we play well, I think we've got a more than good chance to win the game. If we win that game, then it puts us in a position where I'm not going to tempt fate, but I would be thinking, right, I think we're in a position now of reasonable strength. There's still not much of a gap between us and the bottom team, but if we win, considering the fixtures, I'm sort of thinking there might be a little bit more daylight. So fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything is crossed. I'm hoping that if we can get the result that I think we can, then maybe happy days, and it will be a very depressed Bash.
No. You can get your United top on at 12:30 on Saturday because you need us to do you a favour.
Oh yes, yeah. I'm Man United. I'm Man United on Saturday. I hope it goes to form. I'm just looking at the fixture list. I'm sort of thinking if it goes to form, then really if we win, then there really should be quite a little bit of daylight between the sides. But you never know. It's a funny old game, as one old commentator once said, I think.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And one of the other standout games coming up this weekend is Liverpool versus Arsenal, or Arsenal versus Liverpool.
Liverpool versus Arsenal.
Anfield. What do you think about that game, Lewis? What expectations do you have for Arsenal? And how would you surmise Arsenal's season so far? And what do you think's gone right for them? And how's it clicked?
I think when you look at the Arsenal story, I would argue you've got to get a lot of the big decisions on the field, off the field correct. I think I've long been a believer that unless you're one of these unusual clubs, let's say like a Real Madrid, maybe like a Chelsea, ideally if you want to achieve big things, and that's challenge at the top for honors, for titles, you've got to have the whole club structured in a way to achieve success. You can't have any energy going this way or energy going that way. It has to come together right from the top in order to put together enough good decisions where over time you can achieve a great deal of success. If it all started with, I believe, Arteta being appointed, of course you've got to identify the right man. Of course he had connections with Arsenal. He could have got the job after Wenger. Arsenal obviously went for Unai Emery. That didn't work out. December 2019, Arteta comes in. And if you look at his first couple of seasons, there were some, I guess, critical moments and milestones, I guess. You know, winning the FA Cup in the first season, playing a very different brand of football. He beat Man City. They beat Man City in the semi-final. They beat Chelsea in the final of the FA Cup. That, of course, is going to give a young manager who's in his first job a little bit of time, a little bit of respite from the fans who want to kind of see the club back to the good old days. They finished 8th that season with 56 points. The next season, they finished 8th again with 61 points. And I think last season, where they finished 5th, and of course, they had the big drop-off at the end of the season, where they failed to pick up big points at Spurs and at Newcastle. Those are two games that resonates with most people. They finished with more points than the previous two seasons as well. What I would say about Arsenal is they have got, slowly but surely, every key decision, I would say, pretty much on point for the last 2 or 3 years. They appointed Arteta. You had the Daniel X Spotify owner sniffing around the club, making a 2 billion bid because the Kroenkes weren't as interested in the club, let's say, or weren't as proactive in terms of working in around the business. That kind of led to a certain chain of events after the whole Super League fiasco, where Josh Kroenke based himself, son of Stan Kroenke, based himself in and around London. They bought in Edu in 2019. They've promoted him 6 months ago to sporting director. So they've bought a fan favourite. But again, it's one thing bringing a fan favourite. He's got to know what he's doing. A lot of their transfer business is structured. You don't hear many leaks. It's organised. They try and get the player they want. If they can't, they've got some other options that they can go for. It doesn't seem a scattergun approach. You've got the CEO of Vinay Venkatesham, who, again, him, Edu and Arteta work so well together in terms of just that core decision-making process and that structure on the field and off the field. And I think if you look at what the club's done for Arteta in terms of backing him in the transfer market, this season, summer and January together, they've spent, I think, best part of about 177 million. Last year, summer, January, 143 million. He's changed the whole profile of the club. Age profile of the starting 11 this season, Arsenal are top, 24 years of age, pretty much aligned with Southampton. Leeds are actually third, 24.9. So hopefully that bodes well for you in the future, Ayub. But he's changed the whole profile of the club, ripped the contracts of Aubameyang, let Lacazette's contract run out. And you can only do that if you have the utmost faith that you have the right manager who's going to be able to take you to the promised land. And Arsenal, at those critical junctures where it could have gone in a different direction, said, no, we're seeing enough signs of progress under Mikel Arteta to be able to back him. We're going to spend money. And that's why they have spent money. And again, if you look at where they are now in terms of the age profile of the squad, of course, they've got a fantastic opportunity this season. Yeah, potentially on course to hit 94 points. Do I think they'll hit 94 points? I don't, but that's what they're on course to do in terms of average points per game currently. And it's all been these building blocks about ripping up the squad, getting the right players in, the right mindset, the right type of technical ability. And then it's just been working on the training ground. You see the football that Arsenal play. And this is one of the reasons why I slightly disagree with those who say this is the best opportunity they're going to have. Of course, where we are right now in April, 8 points ahead, having played a game more. Do I think Arsenal will find themselves in this position again? Perhaps, perhaps not. But what you can't disagree with is that the footballing identity that's been forged on the pitch, which you can clearly see in terms of the way they structure their play, I don't see how that disappears unless you get some big injuries. And that's possible. Of course it is. That's difficult to foresee. But I think the way they've created that identity, which always takes time, you've got to take your lumps. You've got to take those difficult moments when you finish fifth and you've got Gary Neville and maybe Jamie Carragher saying on Monday Night Football, saying, oh, I think that could be the end of him. And it's at those points that Arsenal said, no, we still think we've got the right man. We just need to make some further improvements, some big additions in the summer, some further additions in January. And right now they're positioned in a good in a good way to be able to take advantage and potentially win the title. Just to answer your question just very quickly before I let you both have your thoughts, in terms of this Sunday, the next run of fixtures for Arsenal are difficult. Let's not make any bones about it. But the way I see it is anything worth having, you've got to work hard for it. And it's not just simply going to be handed to you. And it'll be great to see Arsenal not just see these fixtures as, oh, Newcastle away, Liverpool away, Chelsea at home under a new manager, oh, City away. I would say you see that as an opportunity for Arsenal to lay a marker down and to continue the progress that they've made to date. So let's see. I'm not yet willing to put a prediction out there in terms of for the rest of the season because I am a bit of a glass half empty guy. But again,
he changed his tune. It was half full about half an hour ago.
But I think
don't you be drinking that?
Yeah. You're cheating on your fast, mate.
No, but I think just in terms of how they've gone about their business over the last three and a half years since Arteta's come in, I think is a good template for other big clubs that want to challenge at the highest level. My definition for challenging for the title has always been you've got to be within 5 points with 5 games to go. Arsenal, by definition, will achieve that, and therefore they've ticked what is for me as an Arsenal fan the thing that I asked for my club, which is you've got to be challenging for honours, and they have done. So let's see how it plays out. But I think a great story, and again, I think there's a great template there. If you can get the right guy at the helm and the right structure, because that's important as well, and a level of patience and understanding, he's galvanised that club. The Emirates is a bouncing place once more. Even when they go a goal down, the club, the fans stay with them, and that's the kind of support that you want to see at your club. So interesting to see what happens on Sunday. A huge game, but other than the fact it's a place where Arsenal rarely get any points, I see it also as an opportunity to lay another marker down.
No, yeah, you know what? Fair play to the Arsenal hierarchy in the sense they stuck by him when everyone and their dog had turned on him, like literally. And to be fair, people were turning on him for legitimate reasons, because it just wasn't paying off in previous seasons. But fair play to the, like I say, fair play to the hierarchy, because there were Arsenal fans everywhere, and I mean everywhere, and it's not to shame them or anything, because I think any fan of a big club in that situation would do the same, but they were all asking for his head. There's a lot of revisionism with Arsenal fans at the minute. They think he's the best thing since sliced bread, completely ignoring the fact that they were the ones that turned him. Wow, look at this lighting, by the way. What has happened here?
we can still see you, don't worry.
Sorry for Spotify listeners. There's just a big ray of light that has emerged on my face. The
second coming. Jesus is here.
But yeah, it's terrific work by Mikel Arteta, honestly. After watching All or Nothing for Arsenal on Prime, I went in looking for a lot of laughs, which I imagine a lot of people did. But I came out with a lot of respect for Mikel Arteta because he is a dedicated individual. He eats, sleeps, drinks football, and he's now literally he's bare all the fruit. And I've completely lost that saying, but we will move on. But he's done himself the world of good and Arsenal because he keeps getting the decisions right. His recruitment's been great. They missed out on Mudryk. They brought in Trossard, who's had a wonderful impact since joining, and it's looking good for him. It really is. Did you say they've played a game more, Lewis?
Yes, they've played
a game more, so they can. Okay, and they're 8 points ahead. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. They've been perfect, literally perfect throughout. So even one little hiccup now, and City are going to be on him because they are purring at the minute. So Arsenal, to be fair to them, they've just got to concern themselves with their own performance and not think about City. And it is doable. The impossible is actually achievable for them because no one had predicted this. No one called this. So fair play to them. Ayub, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the matter.
I can't add any more to what you guys have said. Apart from Liverpool, the game itself, I've just got a feeling that it could be Liverpool because it's been a bizarre season for Liverpool. They've been incompetent, rubbish, but at times exceptional. So they've done Man City, they've done Man United, and maybe it's time to do the Arsenal as well. And that will set the cat amongst the pigeons if that does happen, because you're absolutely right, Bash. City are absolutely purring now. They're waiting to pounce. And I think maybe if Liverpool beat Arsenal, it could be the opening that City won there. So
I was going to say, as a neutral, it'd be great for Liverpool to beat them, and I realise it's Liverpool, so let's not.
I think one other final comment I would make on it is that we as fans who don't necessarily get to see our clubs as often as we would like to in person, when you're looking at how they operate in the transfer market, you're looking for some sort of reasoning. You're looking for some sort of understanding. You've got to be able to make sense of it. Like if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be like, I cannot make sense of what is occurring. Whereas with Arsenal, it's like every single signing they've made, I've thought, I can understand it. They've bought a goalkeeper in Ramsdale where you're thinking he's good with his feet. Maybe not the tallest, but we need someone who's good with his feet. Got a bit of personality about him, bit of cheek about him. They buy Ben White, who's had some experience from Brighton and Leeds where he's played multiple different positions. And he wants that slightly defensive-minded right back. Of course, he's converted him to a right back. He's quite versatile, but he can tuck him when Zinchenko goes into midfield, still giving you a stable base at the back. You've got a left-footed, strong centre-back in Gabriel, who happily goes in towards the striker and competes for that first ball. Saliba, more of a Rolls Royce, happy to kind of just lean back and just make sure there's nothing in behind. Zinchenko, technically brilliant, comes in off the left channel. Then in the middle of the park, arguably the best defensive midfielder in the league. That's a topic for another day in part. But he handles that middle of the park all by himself, technically as proficient a defensive midfielder as you're going to find. You've got Odegaard, superbly technical, can see a pass. Xhaka, who's got a little bit of both. He's got a bit of bite, defensive kind of mindset, but also can help, quite decent, quite technical on the ball in terms of his pass making ability. And then you've got wingers who are so positionally disciplined, let's say in Saka, again, arguably one of the best players, definitely one of the best players in the league, but he's so positionally kind of disciplined, keeps his kind of position right there. They work the ball to him and always in good spots. He always passes back the ball. How can I say, when they double up, treble up on him, he's always quick to offload in the right moments, the right timing for everything. Watch the Xhaka goal against Leeds. They treble up on him into Odegaard, quick cross, free man Xhaka. Let's not mention Luke Ayling.
I could have scored against that Leeds defence on that day.
For sure, but it's his decision making for someone so young. And then you've got Martinelli, who may be slightly less technical, but pacey with an eye for goal. And then you've got Jesus, who's got all of that experience from his Man City days, but the perfect number 9, not just someone who can score goals, but he gets everyone involved, happy to assist. So the whole structure of arguably the first 11, you'd say, that's exactly how I would want my team. Quality wingers, eye for a goal, technical ability in the middle of the park as well as energy, but then a fairly good substance at the back as well, with a goalkeeper who can play out and get us playing. So, all in all, they've built the side perfectly, and now it's about building that depth to perhaps be at this position consistently for the next 2-3 years.
No, for sure. Good points. I didn't want to stop you because you were
He was on one,
flowing
wasn't he?
beautifully, but but best defensive midfielder in the league. It's not debatable. It's just wrong, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I think Tyler Adams is good, but I mean,
Yeah.
I just think let's see him put a few seasons together, and then we'll talk. Yeah.
Damn it, that was gonna be my punchline. You move. But yeah, that's all the time we've got, guys. Any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Nothing from myself, Ayub. Good luck on Sunday. This is the bit where you also say good luck on Sunday.
Good luck on Sunday.
That's all we've got time for. Nah, great.
I'm only thinking about Leeds.
Right, guys, remember to like, subscribe, and share this episode with all of your friends, and hit the bell for our next episode, which will take place after the weekend coming, where we will, I'm sure, well, I hope, discuss Leeds' demise. I'm kidding. Well, but yeah, we will hope to catch you early next week with another episode of Just Onside. In the meantime, don't stray off.